The roguelike genre has become a staple of indie games over the last 10 to 15 years, with The Binding of Isaac releasing in 2011 and becoming an instant classic. And in this time period, many a roguelike has been born and forgotten trying to capture that lightning in a bottle that The Binding of Isaac seemed to capture. But the best and most popular roguelikes that released after Isaac released were the ones that weren't really trying to copy what Isaac was. They were the ones that were doing things differently. Some games opted for progression systems that limited the significance of permadeath, and some moved away from the isometric style that Isaac liked so much. But I want to tell you why this game, Risk of Rain 2, is the one that in my mind has taken the top spot of the best roguelike of all time. Because this game has some of the most elegant and genius design of any game I've ever played. Because there's a genius hidden inside of all of this chaos. Oh my god! I think my computer's gonna fucking melt. But before we get to that, we're going to have to go on a bit of a history lesson. A history lesson into the origin of roguelikes. Do you ever wonder why they're called roguelikes in the first place? Well, it's because the game that inspired the genre's creation was called Rogue. It was a little ASCII art game that released in 1980. It doesn't look anything like The Binding of Isaac or other roguelike titles at all. But this is where a ton of the genre's inspiration originated from. It had procedurally generated levels, it had hack and slash combat, permadeath, it had resource management, and it had a ton of intricate game mechanics that you had to learn and master to complete the game. But eventually, the games that fit inside of this genre stopped being so beholden to the game that inspired them, and they started implementing their own new things. There was a lot of stuff that got ditched by modern roguelikes, stuff like the ASCII art and the turn-based movement. Some games, known more commonly as roguelites, circumvented the permadeath aspect of roguelikes a little bit more with in-game currencies and leveling systems that carry over between runs. Stuff like the mirror in Hades that lets you progressively upgrade your character for future runs with a currency that you earned throughout the game. There's also a whole lot more emphasis on item collection in modern roguelikes. There was loot in the original Rogue, but it was nothing like a lot of the games we see today, where the loot is front and center to the entire game. Games like Risk of Rain 2, in fact. See? Full circle, just like that. Told you I'd get back to it, didn't I? So Risk of Rain 2 just got a new DLC, Survivors of the Void. And you know what that means, don't you? That's right, new bugs. Wait. Oh my god, look at him. He's doing the spin maneuver. He's more powerful than I could possibly imagine. Wait. No, that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about the new content, not the new bugs. The new content is awesome. The new items are awesome, the Lean Fiend is extremely unique, and the Railgunner turns you into a quick-scoped genius whenever you play it. But they added something else. Something else really, really important that I've not really seen anyone make a big deal out of. So I'm gonna do it myself. They added these. They're called Void Potentials. These right here, these things are yet another stroke of genius in a long line of incredible design decisions that has made this game what it is. There's a lot of things I like about Risk of Rain 2, but if I had to settle on one single thing that I thought made this game tick, it would be the level of control that you have over your runs. And these little balls are just another addition to that. Because the real magic of Risk of Rain 2 isn't the character design, or the stages, or the items, or the bosses, or the story, or any of that. All of those things are great, don't get me wrong, but they're not the key ingredient. The key ingredient is these two guys right here, the printer and the scrapper. Printers allowed you to trade your items in for whatever the item displayed on the printer shows. This printer shows a soldier's syringe, which is a white item. So I can exchange one of my white items at random for one soldier's syringe from this printer. Then there's this guy, Douglas J. Scrapman. Douglas allows you to pick a stack of any of your items and turn them into scrap. Scrap is then prioritized over any of your other items when used at a printer. So Douglas allows you to get rid of bad items, and printers allow you to turn those bad items into good items. Printers are so unbelievably clever. So clever that I actually can't believe that no other game thought of it sooner. Or at least, not to my knowledge, they didn't. Because a core piece of what makes a roguelike is the random element to the game, right? The RNG is a core piece of what gives roguelikes their replay value. But the more RNG heavy your game is, the less skill dependent it can become. If your run is reliant entirely on getting the best items all the time, then having no control over that makes runs feel like a bit of a coin flip. In Risk of Rain 2, your run is still heavily reliant on your items, but you have a higher degree of control over what items you are going to get in a run. And one of the major ways that the game gives you this control is with printers. But you see, it's clever because if they entirely remove the randomness from the game, then the game loses its replay value. In fact, there is kind of a way to do this in-game with the Artifact of Command. With this artifact, you can just take the best items every single time, and it can be fun every once in a while, but it very rapidly becomes very boring, because runs start to feel samey. Not every item is created equal, so if you're given a choice, you will obviously take the best items every time. So using this artifact suddenly makes the replay value of the game disintegrate into absolutely nothing. So the trick of making a roguelike is that you keep the randomness, so that every run feels different and distinguished, but give players a bit more control over their randomness, so that they feel like their runs aren't entirely beholden to what the game gives them. And the printers are a perfect example of this. The printer you get is random, and most printers are bad, but enough printers show up in the game to where you have a decent chance of getting something that might be better than what you already have. You're not likely to get the exact one item you want to show up as a printer every single run, but out of half a dozen items that are decent on your character, one of them's bound to show up at some point. This, combined with the scrapman, allows you to get a bunch of worthless garbage and turn it into a bunch of stuff that can save your run. The key ingredient to Risk of Rain 2 is control. Maintain that level of randomness to keep the players guessing, but still give them the power over their own fate in whatever run they're in. This also means that a big chunk of what makes a player good and what makes a player bad is what items they decide to take and what they decide to do with their items when they have them. Which items they take from multi-shops alone can make or break a run. In other roguelikes, the best players in the world can't win some runs just because of how bad their luck is. But in Risk of Rain 2, there's a whole host of ways that the game gives you to mitigate that bad luck. There's multi-shops, there's cauldrons, there's void potentials, there's lunar seer portals, there's the Bulwark's Ambry, there's the Trophy Hunter's Tricorn, there's even the Bazaar Between Times lunar item shop. And although I think that lunar coins are a pretty badly executed concept, I think that the lunar shop itself is a great idea, because it gives the player control in a genre defined by its intense levels of randomness. Of course, Risk of Rain 2 is not the only game that gives the player choices like this. Hades gives you a choice of 3 boons whenever you find one. The Binding of Isaac can show multiple items in item rooms, and it also has devil deals and the D6 and stuff like that. But none of these games have such a high level of control over your items as Risk of Rain 2 does. And that's a core piece of what makes Risk of Rain 2 stand tall amongst the rest in my eyes. Another thing that makes Risk of Rain 2 so special, by the way, is the ability to loop your runs. A lot of games have this issue where the moment you start to get a cool item build online, the run's almost over, and you only have a tiny fraction of the time in your run to use it before it's gone. But in Risk of Rain 2, you can infinitely loop your run, going back to the start of a run over and over again. But the enemies scale in strength to keep up with you, so the longer your run goes, the more absolutely insane the run becomes. And the best part of Risk of Rain 2 is when you're so powerful that you can stress test your graphics card just by vaguely looking in the general direction of any enemy. Oh! Okay, it's fine, it didn't crash. It's fine, it didn't crash. Risk of Rain 2 is a great game, and Survivors of the Void only made it better. Instead of trying to heavily copy what came before it, to try and somehow mimic other games in the genre, they instead innovated their design to make what I think is the best roguelike ever made. And it's all thanks to Douglas. Thanks for watching.